Office of Emergency Management, or 7 World Trade Center, was on the north side. The World Trade Center, the 2 towers sat in the middle.
That had been hijacked and their destinations were uncertain at that time. This is a live picture of Lower Manhattan, missing two of its most familiar profiles, obviously. The twin trade towers of the World Trade Center, iconic buildings here in New York, really representing, symbolic, if you will, of the enormous economic strength of this country. They sustained an attack in 1993. They were reopened. The country came back from that, and we went about our merry way again, thinking that in Fortress America this couldn't possibly happen. But of course it has. Neil Livingston is one of the most widely recognized experts on international terrorism. Mr. Livingston, we keep coming back to the same issue. This was a very sophisticated attack. This was not just a lone suicide bomber of some kind. 4 hijacking simultaneously.
It's strange because my building, tower number 1, was the first to be struck. It was the second of the 2 to collapse. I had been out on the street not even a minute. I had made my way 1 block over to not so much the outside office areas of the side that I was on. And then we made our way to the stairwell and in a very orderly fashion made our way down 81 flights.
Was there a check? I mean, was it, Fred, are you here? Bill, are you here? Mary, are you here?
Yes.
Have a strong degree of probability that it's bin Laden, but I think you have to recognize that we are part of a world community, and we have to make sure that before we go out and do something, and I agree with you, if we get the persuasive evidence that we all believe is coming in, that we should have a proportionate response. But nevertheless, we also have to recognize that we have allies in the Middle East, we have allies in Europe.
Name one that would argue without responding today without even asking them. Name one.
I think the Egyptians. I think the Saudi Arabians. But
the Saudi Arabians, whose riches depend on us, would be angry for us.
Not put those rescue workers into danger themselves. So that is obviously the problem. We were told by a couple of people that were in there before rescue workers that there are bodies, a number of bodies lying around in the debris and on the street there. Obviously, part of the job will be to bring them out. We are also told by Port Authority officials that the building over there, which is building number 7, which you can see, that there is some concern on the part of Port Authority officials about the stability of that building at this point.
Capability for such a huge operation. Many world governments have ordered defense alerts and called emergency security meetings. In Moscow, President Vladimir Putin...
Through the day, an inferno raged in World Trade Center building number 7, another massive office tower. Firefighters feared that it would collapse.
Stand back, stay as close as you can where you're not in the way.
But for hours, they stood cut off from the rubble, feeling both fierce and helpless because they were not allowed into the rescue area. In the midst of a frustrating afternoon, evidence of why they had not been sent in. Number 7 World Trade Center collapsed.
You guys have been doing this to me all day. Let's just wait a couple minutes. It's not going to make... 7 was empty.
Okay, somebody might have been pulled out. Somebody else might have died, but at least we would have had a shot at pulling somebody out who just died.
We don't make those decisions.
Right.
Workers were moving cautiously toward the building.
You hear that?
Keep your eye on that building. It'll be coming down.
Closer to the building, it was almost like nighttime. What was left of the building was a fiery hulk. The firefighters thought it might collapse. Pieces of the building kept falling.
The building is about to blow up. Moving back.
Rescue workers pushed people away from the scene.
We are walking back. There's a building about to blow up. On flame. Debris coming down.
Just to rehydrate so they can return to the parched canyon.
Building's going to collapse. Nothing information.
And it's always dangerous.
Building's going to collapse. Nothing information. Building's going to collapse. Nothing information. Building's going to collapse. Nothing information.
And then late afternoon, 5 p.m., still another building collapses. 7 World Trade Center, ruined by falling debris from the Twin Towers.
That's, Peter, it was an astonishing thing because the civilians who were standing around here were all amazed, but things have become so bizarre down here that the hundreds of firemen who were standing around looked at it, felt a bit shocked, but then just said, well, we're going to have even more work to do. Associate producer Lucy Kerrigan had been over near that building just a little bit earlier, and the policeman had told her that they feared the building was going to come down, that they were evacuating people from around it.
Understanding that that building had been evacuated when the collapse occurred.
This was known as Building 7 of the World Trade Center, and that is fresh video you're looking at of that coming down.
Now, again, they were able to get everybody out of that building before it collapsed. So I don't know whether it was accomplished by demolition experts or whether it just happened as a consequence of what occurred earlier today. Understanding that that building had been evacuated when the collapse occurred.
This was known as Building 7 of the World Trade Center, and that is fresh video you're looking at of that.
When the collapse occurred.
This was known as Building 7 of the World Trade Center, and that is fresh video you're looking at.
For Ann Wilson, yesterday's attacks brought back horrible memories from her childhood.
I grew up in England. I was in the Blitz during the war, and when I saw the devastation.
Certainly, number 7 that just went down as we were live on the air earlier on with MSNBC was cleared out. Most people, they said earlier that they were just waiting for that building to go down, so they were expecting this to happen. Not only that, it is still an awesome sight when this happens.
Spoke of inhuman attacks. The British Prime Minister Tony Blair spoke of a battle between the democratic world and terrorism.
When I was directing traffic at the intersection of Northmore and Greenwich, there was a Lieutenant John Wolfe, Manhattan South Task Force commander there, and he went over to a civil engineer and said, when number 7 World Trade Center goes, are we going to be safe here? We were 6 or 7 blocks away. And the civil engineer looked and said, I think so.
So we're talking about 10 blocks. When the towers came down,
yeah,
and like I say, they basically crumbled into themselves.
Yeah.
Did they knock over any other structures, smaller structures, brownstones, stores?
That I can tell you from having been there afterwards, not as much as you would have thought.
One of the things that I think is awfully hard. Give me a sense, just your best guess of how many people were in that area where you were. Are we talking hundreds of people? These are rescue workers, firefighters, police officers, and the rest?
Several thousand.
Several thousand people.
By the time we left, several thousand people were there helping.
And when you got there at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I realized the last thing you were doing when you arrived at 2 o'clock in the morning was counting the number of people around you.
Are as he put it, quote, a part of a very heavy focus by the FBI, being looked at as suspects. White shirt, they both had black hair. As he described them, they weren't really light-complected. Evidently, but what happened was they did impound the car. They took photos of it. It was impounded overnight by the state police and taken to the Maine State Police Crime Lab in Augusta, where it's being held for the FBI. Now, Chief Chitwood did say, gave you some sort of description. He said that
you can be a lot more careful about who you let on a plane. You can be a lot more careful about what kind of blades are allowed. You can be a lot more intelligent about using spies. We know that. We've said it overnight. We know what needs to be done. What was lacking was the will to do it politically, because you didn't need to do it. Now you do.
The collapse of 7 World Trade Center, the building they were so worried about injuring rescue workers, has freed up rescue workers to now go into the area, and they are moving in groups of 20 and 50 as their teams are designated.
So the principal danger to the rescue and recovery teams has been eliminated.
The biggest danger has literally removed itself.